Hey guys, welcome to the PlayerzPod, a German podcast show where we celebrate the greatest game of all, our game of life, reminding us that we are spiritual beings living this amazing game, that we can play it following our very own rules and guidance, and that we are so incredibly loved by all that is. Now, enjoy this amazing interview with the one and only Pam Grout. And if you would like to know how I got to interview her, even though I've just started my podcast and still have a rather small audience, with Pam only being my fourth guest on the show, just listen to the very end and I will tell you all about this amazing, fun, in the flow manifestation. So, hi everybody, welcome to my podcast show called PlayerzPod. We love to play this game of life. And welcome to this fabulous interview with a person I never thought I would be interviewing so soon in my career as a podcaster. A woman who has changed my life and so many others by being such an amazing luminary through her books, her blog, her foundation, all of her work, and simply her being. As many of you know, Pam Grout, woohoo! She's a New York Times best-selling author. She has written E Squared, which has been translated into 40 languages. And of course, a lot more awesome books like E Cubed, which I love so much, Think and Grow Rich, another favorite of mine, Art and Soul Reloaded, and now her most recent one, The Course in Miracles Experiment, which is just genius. Pam also has this amazing blog where she often shares deeply inspiring words of wisdom, in such a light and funny way, by the way, and a lot of miracle stories that her readers send her in. It inspired me to do a section called Magic News in my podcast where I tell my listeners the latest magic in German. Pam even graciously allowed me to translate some of the miracles she posts and share them with my German audience. Thank you so much for this. Pam has also founded the 222 Foundation in honor of her daughter Taz, who transitioned to the other side in October 2018. With the 222 Foundation, she is fulfilling Taz's wish that she should share the love with this world that she used to give to her. So I'm so happy that she's here with me in this little Zoom room. I still cannot believe it. A deeply heartfelt welcome, dear Pam. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you. Well, that was such an amazing introduction. I'm not sure I can live up to all that. I mean, I'm not sure I've ever had such a good introduction or such a praising introduction, but thank you so much. I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day here. It's only, 11 in the morning here, I suppose. What time is it there in Germany right now?
It's 6 in the evening.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. No, I love the introduction. And as we said before you started recording, I love that you put up a 222. I mean, that just means so much to me that you did that. I'm just so thrilled.
Yes, I thought, what can I give to her since she's giving this time to me, which is a great gift. So a little gift back to her. For the listeners, I painted a little picture with 222. And I don't know if you can see this good. It's a hedgehog.
Oh, it's a hedgehog too. Wow, I thought maybe it was a little angel. Oh, wow,
it's supposed to be a hedgehog.
I love it. Oh,
would you maybe like to talk about the hedgehog? Why hedgehog?
Oh, sure. I mean, that's just a sign. My daughter transitioned on October 15th, 2018. But when she was a young child, we used to have this little game that we played. And whoever would say hedgehog to the other one on the first day of the month, like on January 1st, February 1st, each first of the month, whoever would say hedgehog first was going to have a lucky month. That was just our little game we played. And so when she went off to college, off to university, she could, she was always up late studying. So she always won at 12:01 on the first of every month. She would, send me a hedgehog, or she'd just text me hedgehog. It was just a thing we said. We either said it in person or she'd text it to me. And then when she lived over in Europe, in Barcelona, of course, she was, several hours ahead. So, of course, she always won the hedgehog game. But after she passed, about 4 or 5 months later, on the first of the month, she sent me a hedgehog. And then every month since, on the first of the month, I have gotten a hedgehog of some kind, ranging from, I've gotten actual texts from her phone number that say Hedgehog, which is kind of odd. I went in to buy a toy for my friend's granddaughter's birthday. And I said, hey, what's a popular toy right now for a 1-year-old? And they lead me over to these stacking hedgehogs. So just always there's some little hedgehog thing that shows up. I was doing an interview on a podcast on May 1st of this year. And the woman that I was talking to said, you are never going to believe this. It happened to me May 1st. She looked out her window and there was a hedgehog in her backyard. And she said, there's never hedgehogs in my backyard. So anyway, there's always some creative way that the hedgehog shows up on the 1st of the month. And I consider that, a sign from my daughter. In fact, yesterday I was working on what I think may be my next project, which is a card deck. You know how they have those card decks with encouraging things for people that have lost, like a different way to do death or a different way to do grief. Okay. Because if we believe that we can still be in touch with people on the other side, it makes it a lot easier. And so anyway, that's I was working on that yesterday to pitch to my editor. So anyway, yeah.
Oh, that's really, really beautiful. Okay, I would like to go a while back. This is a question I noted when I was reading a book, when I didn't even have an idea that I was really going to interview you one day. So let's go to Breckenridge, Colorado, or to your little blue Toyota and the moment when you were 7 months pregnant at a rather low point in your life. You were depressed, you wrote. Your boyfriend had just thrown you out of the house that you had been living in together. You had packed all your belongings in that little blue Toyota and were heading more or less in the direction of Breckenridge, Colorado, without having the slightest idea what to do with your life. So what happened next? Where did you end up and how did you start building a new life with your baby?
Yeah, well, one of the things when I tell that story, I was going across the country, and when you hear about it now, it's like, wow, that sounds really scary. And I'm sure I was really scared because I didn't know where I was going to be. But as I say, the reason I tell the story is at that point, I realized that none of the ways I'd been living my life, none of the assumptions I made about life were working for me. So I needed to do a different way. And so that's when I started taking the Course in Miracles really seriously. Mm-hmm. And so you might have read about that in my new book, in the Course in Miracles Experiment. So that's at that point, I thought, you know what, this isn't working. All these things I've been thinking, all these things I've been trying just weren't working. I mean, here I am, homeless, driving across the country. And so I decided to practice the Course in Miracles in earnest. And then little by little, as my thinking started changing, as my beliefs started changing, this bigger picture, this bigger thing could come through and work in my life. And I ended up not actually making it to Breckenridge, Colorado. I got to the Kansas City area, and a good friend of mine, or an old boss of mine, actually said, hey, why don't you just stay here until you've had your baby? So I did, live with her the last 4 or 5 months the last couple of months of my pregnancy, and then for 3 or 4 months after Taz was born. And then eventually I got an apartment, eventually bought a house. Things just got better and better. Eventually wrote a book that became a bestseller. So, as I started listening to this divine guidance, things started working out for me. I started, my life just started getting easier as I surrendered more and more to the bigger thing.
Yeah.
I call it the bigger thing, the mothership, God, field of infinite potentiality. There's a lot of names for this other thing that there is this invisible force that has our back, that wants to bless us, that wants to interact with us, that wants to guide us. And it is out there all the time for us, but we have to be willing to listen. We have to be willing to erase all the beliefs and thoughts that we've been using up until this point. I mean, one of the things the Course in Miracles says, it's not really hard. It's just so different than the way we've been living our lives, because most of us tend to live in problem state. We're always looking at the next problem and what are we going to solve and how are we going to do it? But when you start living in possibility state, which is what Course in Miracles suggests, then all kinds of new options are open to you. All kinds of new possibilities are open to you.
Yeah. So I have a daughter who's 2, and I have this thought, seeing you having built this life, being a single mom of a baby and later of a toddler, which in and of itself is a full-time, I would even say 24/7 job. So how did you manage to not only care for your baby all by yourself, but also find the time to earn a living and still follow your joy?
Well, I was lucky in that the work that I do, as a writer, and I'd always been a writer. I mean, for a while I worked for a newspaper, so I had a regular job. But by the time Taz was born, I was already a freelance writer.
Okay.
And so I was able to, work when she was sleeping, for example. I was able to, I have a friend, that would watch her for a couple hours a day. But it was, and I'm not saying it's easy. I give you a lot of credit for your ability to do that, because it is a tough thing. But I had help from a lot of different people, as I hope you do as well. And again, when I started, asking for help from, the bigger thing, from God, from, this field of infinite potentiality, doors started opening. And I think that's what happens when you start asking for help. People will show up in your life. The right book will show up in your life. Something will happen that will kind of show you your next step. So, it was just really one day at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah. So you mentioned that before Taz was born, you already had found the Course in Miracles.
Yes, I had started the Course in Miracles. Wow, how many years before she was born? I'd been doing it, but once, like I said, I was in that situation where I was pregnant and I didn't know where I was going to go. That's when I began to really take it seriously. You have to really practice it. You have to really, surrender your beliefs, because basically Course in Miracles is about rewriting our beliefs. If we have these beliefs that life is hard, that, that nobody loves me, there's no abundance. If you think all those things, then that's what's going to show up in your life, because, we're connected to every possibility, but whatever we put our attention upon is what we end up animating into our life. So basically, when I started really taking the Course in Miracles seriously, I just said, hey, look, I'm open to more possibilities. I've been living in problem state for a while now, so I'm going to be open to possibilities. And to this belief, the Course in Miracles says we all believe in scarcity. There's not enough to go around. So if we believe there's not enough to go around, then we live in fear. We live all tight and worry about everything. Well, that blocks abundance for sure if we do that. So it's really important to open our minds and be willing to open to new possibilities.
Yeah. I know nothing, which is a quote that you pronounce quite differently. And that's from a movie. And you use that quote often. In E-Cubed, you have a chapter as well where you write so beautifully about the idea that there is not one reality, but that in a quantum soup there are 1 million right answers, and that we can never really judge anything. Could you elaborate on that and maybe how it relates to manifesting?
Yeah, no, I love that you like E-Cubed a lot, because that's one of my favorites too. I think a lot of people tend to like E-Squared a little bit better, but E-Cubed gets a little bit more into the spiritual aspects of it. And so it definitely is one of my favorites. But, okay, so anytime we think we know something, we, in quantum physics, they call it collapsing the wave. So what happens is, all this energy is buzzing around out there, and it's all in this unformed state. But as we start thinking about it, and we start observing it, it forms, it coalesces, it collapses, what they call collapses the wave. So that's the only reality that we can see at that point. So when we open up to other possibilities, like judgment, you mentioned judgment. Anytime we're judging, we're like, okay, this is the way it is. Like, for example, I was a single mom. I could say, well, this is the way it is. Single mom, it's going to be hard. I'm going to not be able to follow my dream. I'm going to not be able to do what I love. Well, if I believe that, and that is a common thought that a lot of people would say, how could the abundance come into my life? How could that happen? Because that's what I'd collapsed those waves, or I had made that up as the way it was. So you basically, by, offering yourself up to the bigger thing, you're sort of uncollapsing that wave. You're entering again that field where anything is possible, where, the waves are, just out there, haven't been coalesced yet. So that's what judgments do. And I don't know if I've exactly answered your question. I think. Okay.
Yeah. So we already talked a little bit about Taz. In her honor, as I already mentioned, you created the 222 Foundation. In a blog post that you wrote shortly after she passed, you wrote, "I decided to take Taz's message to me. Mom, you've got to take all that love you gave to me and give it to everyone else and focus on the love." How did you receive this message from her? And can you talk a little bit about the 222 Foundation?
Yes. Well, I feel like Taz, we believe that, we're very much believers in the material world, the physical world. So we believe that there's this side and the other side, right? I mean, we always talk about the other side of the veil. I mean, that's just a common thing. So that's a belief. And again, we collapse that way that we're not in touch with people, that they've really left. Well, as we know from quantum physics, you can't destroy energy, and we are all energy. So Taz is still very present, although not in the physical anymore. So for me, she's still a real big part of my life. She's still, I think about her all the time. I feel like I get guidance from her. I feel like she's, I don't know if you'd call her an angel. I mean, she was an angel, I think, and when she was in the physical. I mean, to me, she was like this perfect kid. One of the things I always said is that, there's an old saying, I don't know if you say this in Germany, but they say here, God won't give you more than you can handle. God, because like difficult things happen and we'll go, well, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And I used to say, well, God didn't have any faith in me because he gave me this perfect child. I mean, she was just perfect in every way. Mm-hmm. So obviously, I don't even believe that's necessarily true that God gives us things to handle. But anyway, that is kind of a belief. So I always said she was a perfect child. So anyway, so when she transitioned to the other side, obviously that's a pretty earth-shattering, it was such a big shock. It was totally unexpected. She had an aneurysm. I mean, no way we could have predicted that in any way. So it was a big shock. So it took a while to, I'm still dealing with it. I don't know that you ever get over something like that. You learn to, develop a different kind of relationship with them. And so that's what I've done. And as I said once, it's like it was apparent to me that she was no longer that baby in the crib, as she got older. She was no longer that 5-year-old heading off to kindergarten. She was no longer, the teenager. She was, at the time she passed, she was a fully functioning, happy, wonderful adult. But she's no longer that anymore now either. She is a spirit. She is, a consciousness. She's gone back to the non-physical realm. And so from there is like, I need to learn to communicate to that. So it's a way of me actually growing and expanding myself too.
And you also mentioned that it's a way of learning to carry it.
Right. You don't ever, like people go, oh, have you gotten, like you don't get over something like losing your child, but you learn to carry it. You learn to deal with it. You learn how to go on.
And if that's possible to answer, how is this process of carrying or learning to carry it going for you at the moment?
Well, you have good days and you have not so good days. I mean, it's like anything else. There's days when I can so believe that she's still present and I can feel her around me. And there's some days that I just feel devastated, and I don't even want to get out of bed. So, I think you have less and less of those as you go along, or I'm finding that I'm having less and less of those as I'm going along. But no, it's something that, you do have. And part of the reason I started this foundation, it's a way of, again, changing consciousness. So we fund projects every year on 2/22, on February 22nd. And so I've had 2 years of those so far. And so we funded 2 different projects. Well, actually, we did 3 projects last year on 2/22. But so anyway, I've set up a foundation, and we do this grant once a year. And I take pitches. In fact, I'll be opening up for pitches, probably not in too long, probably in a few months. And then people send in their ideas, and then we pick which ones to fund. But again, we look for projects that really support the idea that the world is abundant, that we're all connected, that everyone longs to be creative, and that changing our consciousness about these things is our greatest need. So that's sort of the mission of the 222 Foundation, is supporting projects that honor creativity, and they have a really great idea for a way of changing consciousness.
Yeah. You also talked in a different interview You said that it was in January, and the person asked you what was your most recent idea or project. And back then you said that you might write a book with Taz about the afterlife. Has
Right. That's
this?
kind of the project I was talking about, this card deck. And what it
Okay.
is and why I think it's kind of, there's a lot of books on grief. There's a lot of parents that have written books about losing their children. I've read a lot of those books. And so that's a one-time thing. You read it, and then it's on the card decks, and they're kind of popular over here. Each, so there'd be 52 cards. So every week there'd be a different card. So it's just a way of kind of keeping it in mind, kind of this other idea in mind that they are still here, that they can give you signs, that you can be in touch with them. So it would be like a 52 reminders, a one for every week of the year. Or people could just throw it in a pot and pick one out, like, okay, this is what I need to hear today. I mean, you can do with a card deck any way you want to do it. But I feel that, yes, that Taz is helping me with that. And in fact, as I said on the cover of the proposal, I put the name and then I said, by Pam Grout with help from Taz. So anyway, yeah.
How's she helping you? You mentioned once that it's like you listen in a general way of writing, that you listen. Is that something like the same, that you get signs from her or thoughts, or maybe?
Yeah, I feel her presence within me. I'm the one carrying her forward, so she's within me. So it's kind of hard to exactly explain. I mean, the signs are real specific, and that's a sign, but that's not like saying, oh, well, let's do this. But I'll get an idea that I feel like, oh, that came from Taz because that was something that she would have said. That's something she would have thought of. So it's more like that, how I can feel that where the thoughts are coming from. Yeah.
So you seem to make friends very easily. And you have one friend who is another one of my favorite authors. It's Anita Moorjani. For everybody who does not know her, run and get her book, Dying to Be Me, where she so beautifully writes about her near-death experience. So I'm curious, what's the story of your friendship? How did you meet? How did you connect as friends? And how was Anita maybe able to help you after your loss, having been for a short while where Tess is now?
Yeah, and she knew Taz as well, so that was kind of nice. Oh, forgive my phone's ringing over there. Hopefully it's not going to mess up the sound too much. So Anita and I were speaking together in London. This was, I don't remember what year, but my book, well, when E Squared came out, I was invited all over the world to speak, and it was a Hay House thing in London, and Anita happened to be there, and so we just connected and became friends, and then we've just stayed in touch. Then we've spoken at other events together, and then I've been to visit her. So, in fact, I've been to visit her a couple different times in California, and after Taz passed, I did go out there. I was speaking in California, the northern part, and she lives in LA now. She and Danny live in LA. So I flew down and, saw her for a little bit and stayed with her. And interestingly enough, she had several friends down there. She had another really good friend who had lost a son as well. And so I connected with them. She does a lot of, I don't know if you're familiar with Geraldine Glass. She does a lot of the sound bowls. And she felt like her son led her to that after he passed. So, I was able to do a sound healing session with Geraldine. And then Dr. Sue Morter, who's another energy healer, she happened to be there as well. And she had worked a lot with Geraldine, after her son passed. So anyway, a lot of good things were happening there at Anita's place that I was able to get a lot of comfort and, just again, a different way of looking at things.
Yeah. So how are you spending your days these days? You are a travel writer as well, but I imagine that you don't travel as much anymore. So how's your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I'm retired from travel writing, but I'm certainly not doing any travel writing right now. In fact, I don't know that we're really allowed to even leave our country. I think we're sort of, everyone's, we're kind of the pariahs. I mean, we can still travel around the country in a car, but I have been pretty much staying home. And so, no, I haven't done any travel writing since, the pandemic started. I've been playing some pickleball. I'm a big fan of pickleball, so I do that. I've been doing a lot of reading, and I think it's kind of a time to just, gather in and listen to see, what is my next project? What is my next thing to do? If you believe like I do that you get guidance, you just sort of sit quietly and wait for guidance. So I'd say I'm more in a time of regeneration and, with new ideas. Like I said, yesterday I did work on this proposal, and it's the first one I've done since, the last book came out. So that felt really good. So, that could be my next project. I also have a television series that I've worked on over the years, and I've been, playing around with that a little bit. So, yeah, mostly it's a good time to do those projects at home, which is what I've been, as a writer, I work at home. So it hasn't been as big a change other than the travel writing piece. And several of my events were canceled as well. But anyway, yeah, so things I guess are different, but it has given me time to do writing, reflecting, doing a lot of reading.
I imagine that from all of this reading, you get a lot of quotes because we have this cool hobby in common, actually, which is collecting quotes.
Oh, yay.
Yes, I've been writing down quotes that I love in my journal for ages, and you are this master collector. You even start almost every text with a quote. I find it so beautiful because I think it's a perfect doorway into all of these texts. So, do you read a book every day to find all of those?
No, but I'll sometimes get 10 or 15 quotes out of one book. So I have this little journal, that I write in. And so, I love the way they said that. And even, it might be in the middle of a paragraph and I'll pluck one thing out. And then sometimes, I'll see a quote in somebody else's writing. You're allowed, it's called fair use. So as long as you attribute the person, you can use a quote from a person. So yeah, I love collecting quotes. And, some people love poetry, and I actually kind of like poetry too. But to me, a quote, one that really sums up something I'm trying to say is so, I don't know, so important. So yeah, I've always been a big quote collector. As I said in something, some people collect hats, some people collect salt and pepper shakers, but I collect quotes. And it sounds like I've met a fellow collector. So, hey, cool.
Yes. And I've once read a quote by Alan Cohen, and he said about affirmations, and I think it applies to quotes as well, that you love it so much because the spirit in you loves to hear the truth about itself.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I like that.
I like that too. So, talking about quotes, there's one quote from you that I would like to mention, and I think it's really fitting for this time right now, which is: the world right now is crying out for a team of radio towers who are beaming in the cosmic energy of infinite possibility. It needs a force of human frequencies who believe in the power of light and love. This is from Think and Grow Rich. And I think it's really perfect for these days.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, those of us that know about the power of our thoughts and the power of our minds, I think it's really important for us to step up to that, because there's a lot of bad news out there right now. Yes. And those of us that know that that's the way it is, that might be the way it appears to be, but we can also create it as we want it to be. So it's important to not just settle in on that one reality and to realize that there are other possibilities, other realities. And that is what's really important for those of us that know that to do, because, the world, like I said, could use a lot of light and love right now. So yeah.
Yes. And with your work, you are, I would say, giving a lot of electricity to all of those light towers.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this.
Yes. Well, thank you for the work you're doing. That's fabulous that you're doing this. And wow.
Oh, it's like you, right? I'm doing this out of pure joy, and people thank me, and I'm like, why do you thank me? I want to do this.
Right. Yeah, yes. I feel like I kind of write for myself, really, because this is what I need to hear, and this is what I want to convey. So it sounds like same for you too. So I think when you're following your joy and you're doing that thing that you're meant to do, that that you're being guided to do, I think it is really blessing to you and blessing to others, because you're actually doing that thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you want to say to close this conversation? Like maybe some last word of crazy, maybe just a word like, when I came up with this question, I had the word Saskatchewan in mind. Anything that comes to your mind right now that wants to be said?
Well, it made me think of Sasquatch, Bigfoot. And there was a funny story about a woman who, I don't know, do you remember in East Square where I had those little wands?
Yes.
Okay, where you watch the wands and you watch what they do as your thoughts do different things. So this girl was giving a workshop with these kids at the drama school in New York City. And they were talking about my book and about, hey, you look what your thoughts do, and you can manifest different things. And so the kids were, spent the weekend. These drama students were manifesting things. But then at the end, they said to this woman, who was a reader of my book, she said, "Okay, can we manifest Bigfoot?"
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "Oh, wow. Well, I don't know." But she said that when she flew home, she was from Arizona, but when she flew from New York back to Arizona, she said she opened the airline magazine and there was Bigfoot. So it's like, so she had to tell the kids, "Hey, you guys, we did manifest Bigfoot." So that was kind of a fun little story. One of the things you mentioned that you share a lot of these miracle stories as well, but it's been really fun for me because I've gotten so many great stories from people, and it's just a real joy to open my inbox and just find out these stories of people that have manifested things or had a miracle in their life. And, oftentimes they start with the heading, "You are never going to believe this,"
Yes.
but, and then they tell me their story. So I'm glad that you're able to share those as well. And I'm sure you've probably got lots and lots of those stories of your own, more than likely.
Yes, and way more than once I've already told you in my head about, "You're not going to believe this." Okay, so Pam, thank you so much for this amazingly awesome interview. I'm deeply grateful and so happy, and very much looking forward to sharing this wonderfulness with the world. So I'm sending you so much love and light and gratefulness and all the best from Germany. Have a wonderful day today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so happy. And thank you so much for the beautiful picture.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Give your
Bye.
daughter a kiss for me. Bye-bye.
I will do so. Thanks. Bye. Okay. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I hope it gave you some joy, inspiration, upliftment, and just a good time listening. As I promised, I want to tell you about how I manifested this interview, because to me, it's a little manifestation miracle. It made me feel like I really finally figured out how to do this magic. Like in the moment when we were kids and we were just learning to ride a bike, and suddenly it worked. That is how I felt. So, for ages, I have loved Pam Grout's books. And ever since I can remember, I love asking people questions. Just recently, I launched my own podcast where I follow this passion of asking inspiring people questions and immersing myself in the magic of this life by publishing the magic news. So a few weeks ago, when I was working on my podcast, I really tried to implement the idea of following the flow. I thought, well, what would I like to do right now? How about going on Pam Grout's blog and reading her newest post? Of course, immediately the voice in my head said, "Oh, no. That's procrastination. You can't do that. You have to find some new miracles for your next magic news episode." But thankfully, I said to the voice, "Thanks for your opinion, but we are doing things the flowy way today." So I went ahead and read through some of Pam's latest posts. And then I thought, why not write her an email to tell her about the magic news? And to have her know that she inspired me to do them, and that through her inspiration, now even more magic is being shared with the world. Okay, so I got on the page where you can send her an email through this form. And when you're on that page, Pam has a message for her fans saying that she's always happy to receive messages, but that unfortunately, since she gets so many emails, she's unable to answer most of them. Okay, I thought, that's fine. I will still at least put the information out there for her. So I wrote her an email and I told her about the magic news. And I thought, if a miracle happens and she does read this email, I have to ask her if she would maybe be willing to give me an interview on the podcast. So I did that. And after sending the email, I went on doing some different stuff and really had a nice day. And mostly forgot about the mail. In the evening, when I was meditating, I had the idea to imagine how it would feel like to receive an answer from her and to eventually really interview her. So I did that, out of joy. I really did not do it because I thought I have to manifest it, but because I really liked entertaining myself with that mind movie. I think what also contributed to this dream of mine becoming a reality so soon was that I had been living this possible scenario of interviewing Pam in my mind for quite some time before it actually happened. For example, one day when I was working on the podcast, I had the idea of making a list of people that someday in the future I would love to interview. Of course, Pam was on that list. And then, whenever I would read or hear something from one of these persons and a question would pop up in my mind that I would love to ask them one day, I would go to that list and write the question down. So actually, the first question that I asked Pam, the one about Breckenridge, Colorado, is from that list. The next morning, I opened my inbox and there was one email. And it was from her, from Pam. And I opened it thinking, oh, that must just be an automatic answer. But no, I read, "Aren't you awesome, Caroline?" And then she said yes to the interview. I was so excited and happy. I couldn't believe it. And I immediately told my husband about it. He just looked at me and said, "You're crying." Yeah, so that's my beautiful manifestation miracle with Pam Grout. I hope it inspires you to really believe in your dreams coming true. And I wish you a wonderful and magical week. Bye.